Hi, friends. It takes a lot to make a stew, but I did it today. We are going to be here filling a niche that is missing on the internet that I believe needs to be out there. That's why I've awoken from my YouTube hiatus to bring it to you all, which is ranking the Adult Swim infomercials. So I'm really just gonna get right into it, but before I do that, I'm prefacing this by saying these are the Adult Swim infomercials as defined by HBO Max, because HBO Max has them on streaming, which is where I just did my most recent rewatch. There are different ones on YouTube that like sometimes get counted in Adult Swim infomercials, but the ones I'm going to count today are just the ones on HBO Max. And with that being said, we're going to go through them in order of the way that they're presented on HBO Max. So that starts with, I think, the oldest one and ends with the most recent. There's kind of like a chunk of them that were 2014 era, and then a chunk of them that were like 2019 era, I think. So we're going to go through both. I will say, so just in general, the criteria that I'm kind of using for this are that I am really interested in absurd humor. I love absurd humor. I love oddly creepy things, like things where you don't really understand why it's creepy, but it's creepy. I think that those two things make it clear why I like Adult Swim infomercials. But the other thing, again, why I like Adult Swim infomercials very clearly is I love a good parody. So I feel like as I was thinking about these rankings, the three things that I really kept in mind were, was it funny? Was it spooky? Do I want to watch it again? And was it like a well constructed parody of a certain genre? Which I feel like because these were infomercials, they're all sort of meant to be parodies of some sort of late night TV genre. So, with that being said, let's get into it. We're gonna go again in order of the way they're presented on HBO Max. So the first one that was on there is Broom Shakalaka. This one is a straight infomercial parody. I'd say it's a solid representation of what the Adult Swim infomercials are. It has some comedy. I did laugh. It has some gore. It's pretty absurd. On rewatch, so I just finished a new rewatch. I would say that I was like, oh yeah, I remember this one, and like would rewatch it. But now that I've seen it again, I don't like need to rewatch it right away. And so that to me is putting Broom Shakalaka in the B tier. We're starting off kind of establishing our average here. And so moving from establishing that average, we're going to move into, I mean, I guess a little spoiler, one of my favorites, which is For Profit Online University. I think this one is a great parody. If people haven't seen the series, I guess I should explain these in some detail, but I'm also assuming that if anyone is watching this, they're probably people who have seen the series or like are familiar with the concept. But this one is basically a parody of like online universities that are kind of increasingly growing to be scams, and it touches on like commercialization. I don't know, it has really good themes about AI, which is another big thing, and like what these online universities actually do. And this is one that I have referenced. A lot of people actually use the word digital gardener, which is a big thing in this one, and I like have asked about whether people are referencing this thing before. So I've referenced it. Great actors, Nicole Byer, great cast. I am actually going to put this one in S tier personally, just because it hits for me. Now the next one is the first of Alan Resnick's videos. So this is something I'm gonna shout out a YouTube channel called Night Mind, because they're a channel that really goes into like interpretation of different horror stuff, especially online horror, kind of like found footage slash, yeah, that sort of online 2010s genre of horror. Really think that the writer of a lot of these that Nightmind has talked about, who is Alan Resnick, very fascinating, very interesting work that he's done. And this is the first one that comes up that has him in it. Obviously, this is like a good one that I would recommend watching. Now, to me, this isn't the best of the ones he's done, but it's still great. So I'm gonna move this third one, Live Forever as You Are Now with Alan Resnick, into the A tier. I think if it's there, the only quotable line I can think of from this is the I love my wife. I guess I'm kind of explaining them as I go, but all of these are like no more than 20 minutes. They're really short because they're in this infomercial format. They were all kind of meant to originally come on screen at 4 a.m. So it's all these like short parody format videos. Like if they're not memeable, if they're not rewatchable, then what's the point? So this brings us to a fart copter. I'm not like a huge fart humor person. I will say, Fart Copter, despite its name, the premise is not purely about fart humor. Like, it's kind of making fun of fart humor. It's not one that's like particularly funny to me or particularly dark. I would watch it again. This one could kind of float between B and C tier to me, but I am gonna put it in C tier for a little more balance here. You might find it super funny, and if you did, if someone was like, oh, Fart Copter is my favorite, I wouldn't be like, what's wrong with you? But it's not my favorite. And we have another C tier coming up here after personally, which is the salad mixer. So this one, again, kind of some sexual humor, or however I'm supposed to say that without getting demonetized, which is like funny, but to me this one is C tier because the premise is kind of one note and it goes on too long. And that to me, like in anything else, like in another video, it might be funny, but a lot of these infomercials, the thing that I really like about them is even in a 10-minute format, how much they're able to escalate the premise. So how much they're able to like start off as just a parody, but then introduce something funny, and then introduce something dark, and then, be kind of multifaceted. And to me, Salad Mixer was not that multifaceted. So that's why it's going into C tier. The next one is actually two infomercials that have been combined on HBO. So I'm going to have to rank them together. And that is Alpha Chow and Goth Fitness. So these are two different ones. Again, both of these are kind of classic infomercial parody format. I think that these are honestly kind of surprisingly dark and creepy, especially Goth Fitness. And then Alpha Chow has some memorable imagery. Again, this one's going in B tier for me. And I guess there's a little theme emerging in B tier that are the ones that are just kind of to me solid, like this is an infomercial parody where we're throwing something kind of dark, kind of gory, kind of funny into the parody or to the infomercial. So yeah, that one's going in B. I would watch it again, but I have no need to right now. And the dog human hybrids kind of scare me, and that was a spoiler. Okay, now we're getting into the kind of most famous Adult Swim infomercial. It's the one that's on the icon that represents the series on HBO Max, and this is Too Many Cooks. So Too Many Cooks is the classic. I think a lot of the times, and I think this was the case for me, if I remember correctly, it was the first one that I was introduced to in the series. So it's kind of a really good way to get people, I think, hooked into this series if you like it. I won't super spoil these as I've been trying to avoid. I've been trying to just give teasers, so if people want to watch them, they go ahead and do that. But Too Many Cooks is a sitcom opener parody, and I do love sitcoms. And it's, again, surprisingly dark, but it's also funny. This is one that I showed my parents because I thought they would get a kick out of the nostalgia, and it didn't hit. But I sing this song, so I could be counterculture and not put this in S tier, but to be honest, it goes in S tier. The next one is the New Bridge Tourism Board presents We're New Bridge, We're Coming to Getcha. This one, there are a few of these, again, rankings or tier lists that exists, like I said, but there was one where this got ranked kind of low, and it got ranked kind of low, and I was like, I can see why it did, because I kind of just remember the vague premise. Like there aren't a ton of like individually funny things, but the whole thing is kind of funny and I laugh. I would watch it again. It's gonna go in B tier for me. It's gonna go right there with the solid, like, would rewatch classic. All right, now we're getting to a nice little chunk of them that I feel like probably again reveal some of my personal preferences rather than just like general memeability or fame. One of them is In Search of Miracle Man. So this is one that it parodies sort of like like televangelist religious fervor and kind of self-help culture and all of that I find interesting. The fact that I like the religious ones is a little bit of a spoiler for One Below too, but I remember the song We're in Search of the Miracle Man. And I don't know, I like this one. I do. Some people don't. It's A tier for me. The next one is Smart Pipe. So, again, in talking about the parody format, this one to me is really funny because of the format. So, it does really well a format of like local TV news, does intro to a tech company that just moved into the area. The main actor is really good at delivering like upbeat news anchor. I think the actual content of it is kind of odd, and given that I put fart copter and salad mixer low, maybe it's surprising that I think Smart Pipe is funny, but I just like the format and it makes it rewatchable for me. So Smart Pipe is another one that's personal A tier. The next one is one that again I mentioned that I think the religious ones are really interesting. Maybe this one just hits to me because I grew up Christian or like documentaries or what have you. It's kind of lame too, but The Book of Christ. This one is about a lost book that was written directly by Jesus Christ, and it is being reviewed by people who are sitting near it while it remains preserved in precious argon. And I don't know, this is one that I've watched multiple times, and I think it's a really good part of the lineup. I'm going to put this in personal A tier. The next one again, so now, like I said, we've hit kind of a good stride. I feel like this late, early season of the infomercials is really funny. This one is Frank Pierre Presents Pierre Resort and Casino. This one is kind of more creepy. When I was rewatching it, I knew that right around this point in the show was when one that you will soon reveal is kind of the scariest one of these to me was about to come up. So I was like, okay, am I in the right headspace to watch this scary Adult Swim infomercial? But it was Frank Pierre Presents Pierre Resort and Casino. And actually, the end of this one is pretty creepy. I forgot about that. This one has some scary undertones. The thing that I like about this one, again, is the format. They're parodying that screen on a hotel TV that auto plays and tells you about the amenities of a resort. I think this actor is really good at doing like smarmy kind of Las Vegas hotel owner. This one's funny to me. Frank Pierre is going in A tier. Okay, now we're getting to one that if people are big fans of this series, they're probably excited to hear how I think about it, and it's unedited footage of a bear. This one to me is the scariest in the series. I mean, again, not like this is a comedy series, but as I said in the beginning, I think that this Adult Swim infomercial genre just does a great job at combining humor and absurdity with horror. And the first time I watched this one, it disturbed me to the point where, like, now when I'm gonna rewatch it, I'm like, okay, are we ready? I'm gonna watch unedited footage of a bear. I don't know how much I want to spoil this one, again, if people are watching this before they've seen the series, but I guess what I'll say is don't skip the ad that pops up during said footage of a bear. And in that ad, there's this one scene where, like, the woman puts her leg up to the side mimicking her daughter. And that, for some reason, just really stuck with me. Like, this is really creepy. This is another one, again, where, like, I'll plug Night Mind for the next couple, in that there's a lot of, like, commentary here, too, about the way that we talk about mental health medication in the media and some of the side effects that go along with these. And so, yeah, this one's really good. Like, this is one that I would definitely recommend to people. This is S tier. Again, as with Too Many Cooks, I'm not breaking the mold here. The next one that I'm going to talk about is This House Has People in It. So I would say, for anyone who is interested in this series but is really interested in sort of that creepy 4 a.m. parody horror, like creepypasta-esque, like mild oddities kind of obscure horror, this is the third in the trilogy that I'd say is Too Many Cooks, even though that one's more lighthearted and funny, but still. Too Many Cooks, unedited footage of a bear, and then This House Has People in It. So This House Has People in It, it to me, like, on watch, is somewhat less compelling than unedited footage of a bear, but here's where I'm going to bring back the Alan Resnick piece. I mentioned that Alan Resnick, who's one of the writers of some of these, has this really interesting and like odd style of playing sort of a cringy character. And I think there are times where I'll talk about this with some of the later videos, but part of that absurd humor genre, I like Tim and Eric, I like I Think You Should Leave. I like a lot of this humor that's making fun of like weird people and like the weirdness that's just present in our lives. And so this one, I'm putting it in S tier. I guess there's the big whoop. And it's honestly because of what this video has, but also because of this video in the background that is also available. That's the video that's on the screen in the living room of the family in This House Has People on It, which is this clay molding video about Lynx disease. And yeah, so I would recommend like doing the deep dive on This House Has People in It, watching the video, watching the background video, watching the Night Mind commentary on the video. But maybe this is just me. This is the kind of stuff that I like to do with my Saturday afternoons. If you feel that way too, do deep dive this one. We have just finished me praising this series and talking about how I love the parody format, all these good A tier ones. Now we're getting into a couple, like, I think this is still the end of that first chunk, hasn't jumped to that second chunk yet. There's this one called Mops. Mops it's a parody of like an kind of like old made for TV movie sort of a thing. And it is funny, but I kind of want to skip this one on rewatch, not because of the clip itself or because of the content, but because it's all done in like fast forward format, like someone's fast forwarding through a VHS tape, and it's kind of annoying just because it's all in that like high pitched sound that you would get when you fast forwarded a VHS tape. If people remember these, now I'm dating myself. But yeah, so Mops is like a good premise, but that format is a little bit annoying for me, even though it's funny. So this one's going in C tier. And then the next one is this Giles Vanderhoot, which is about a guy trying to film an ad for his like wellness program. Kind of funny, not anything super memorable. Honestly, this one is also C tier to me, just because it kind of reads like a funny YouTube sketch comedy more so than an Adult Swim infomercial. It doesn't quite have the like horror or the unexpected absurdity that I think some of even the B tier ones have. All right, the next one is Live at the Necropolis, Lords of Synth. This one is a parody of a synth competition at the Necropolis, which is funny only because since then I have seen YouTube clips of like Yanni performing at the Necropolis. This is like, we're at the Acropolis. Sometimes I don't know what's parody and what's not anymore. This one hits. This one to me has really good absurd humor, like Panos the Wonder Child who makes an appearance, the presidential pod. I think this one's funny. I've recommended it to friends. Live at the Necropolis, Lords of Synth is A tier for me. The next one is News Hits. This one I think is classic what Adult Swim infomercials give you in their best, which is starts off as a parody, kind of odd, it's kind of funny, and then you realize it's really dark too. And so there's a lot of fun, like, when is it switching? Like, at what point would this be normal versus at what point is this getting weird? News Hits is a really good one to me. I'm also putting it in A tier. So next, I believe this is, at least for me, around the time that the new guard of infomercials comes in, which is that jump from like 2014 to 2019. This one is called Mulch Town, and it's a series of three shorts that are just sort of about a small town. And so that's sort of compelling. And it is actually kind of interesting. Like, there's this thing about the frog team, and I ended up referencing that to a friend later the day that I watched this on rewatch. So clearly it has some references, but it's not exactly the same format. And there's a turtle that gets beat up in this episode. So I don't like that. It's okay. So Mulch Town to me is C tier. I know you're probably thinking, is there even a D tier? I mean, clearly I am a fan of this series. Is there a D tier? Well, I've got one now. Some people like this one, I think. To me personally, maybe it's just because like I'm not a wrestling person and I don't know what this is a parody of other than I guess sitcoms, but there's already too many cooks. The Suplex Duplex Complex. I don't really get this one. It's not just because of something kind of randomly annoying, like in Mops, where I just don't like that forwarded sound. I just don't, it doesn't really hit for me. And I remember on this rewatch being like, oh, should I just skip this one? But I didn't because I was like, well, maybe it's funny. And then I watched it and I was like, it's just not for me. Sorry. Suplex Duplex Complex is D tier. The next one is Wet Shapes. Wet Shapes to me is a new one that reads like the classics. It is actually a parody of those like donation drives that you would see on TV on random cable channels late at night. So it's new, it reads like the classics. It's not amazing, but it is funny. I would definitely rewatch it on another go around. So Wet Shapes is going in A tier. The next one is Innovation Makers, the Coyote Suit. So this one, similarly to Smart Pipe, it's a parody of maybe not Discovery Channel, but some cable channel would cover like local people who are making new inventions. And so it's really good production of that. I know, that's kind of been done before with this, but it's decent production and it's kind of funny. And again, the genre sort of twists and turns a little bit here and there with a good last number that stuck with me. So Innovation Makers is going in B tier. I think it's solid. This next one is A Message from the Future. So this one is a parody of political ads, which I am an SNL fan. I think I've seen more political parody, so it's not necessarily new and exciting, whereas some of these like I said, I've never seen a parody of like a synth battle that's been televised on 80s TV. Like, I've not seen a parody of that. I guess SNL does things sort of like this, but A Message from the Future to me is not necessarily totally new, but it is funny. It does have twists and turns. It is imaginative. I like thinking about what culture might be in post-apocalyptic societies, so it's sort of interesting. I'm gonna put it in B tier. So the next one is Cool Dad, official trailer. This one is a parody of previews that would be on VHS tapes from the 90s for like children's TV. So it's very nostalgic. This one's definitely hitting for my demographic. It's definitely, I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that I'm just an adult who adult television is targeted for, probably more generally. but a lot of these do, when there's this specific niche of humor and this specific niche of references that they're giving, I feel like it is very millennial humor, but not millennial humor in like that BuzzFeedy sort of Disney brand, but millennial humor in more of that like Lonely Island 2000s stoner brand of humor, which that's the one that gets me more. So anyway, that's an aside, but Cool Dad is a funny parody of movie trailers. It's kind of interesting. I like it because it's nostalgic. I remember being excited about it on rewatch, which is going to push it from B to A to me. Just because like that message from the future and stuff, it's like, yeah, would rewatch, but I wasn't like, oh yay, this one. The next one is Final Deployment 4 Queen Battle Walkthrough. This one is a parody of YouTubers basically, so it's kind of funny that I'm making this video right now, but also like specifically Twitch streamers or video game streamers. And I'm not going to spoil this one. I think this content topic is very relevant and it's funny, it's interesting, it's thought provoking. I'm going to give this one S, but I'm calling it S of the new ones, as in of this second half. I think this is the best. Would definitely rewatch it like anytime, which I think is true of some of these S ones for me. Okay, so I already said that I think Final Deployment 4 is the best of the new ones. So be aware that my top tiers are a little bit settled in at this point. These last few are really hit or miss. There's one called Food, the Source of Life, which is a parody of, again, kind of like a documentary that might be shown in a school or something like that, of food and how it gets to your plate and kind of farm to table. Obviously, with Adult Swim, it's not that simple, and the food goes through a bunch of stuff that is not actually what food goes through. It keeps you interested, but it doesn't quite have that same flavor as some of the first ones. It, to me, is going to go in C tier. Again, C tier really isn't bad. I really like this whole series. Like, I'm looking back at those. It's just the ones that, again, when I rewatch this series, because I will, I feel like I do every so often when I just want something to kind of oddly ponder, I'm just not going to be so excited for Food, the Source of Life. We're ready for our next one. It is called Pervert Everything. This is one that I really want to like. I want to get it. I can see that it's kind of trying to go for Alan Resnick, but I'm just not getting the tone. They do some things in this that's, it feels to me like if someone loved the sort of creepy, like internet imagery, found footage genre, but then didn't exactly like have a clear vision of how they wanted to go for it, which I can't complain about too much because that would be me if I made one. That is me. If you look back at my channel, my friends and I in college made one called, it's called Do You Remember? So I have literally made this. I can't complain, but mine wasn't televised on Adult Swim, and it wouldn't be, I don't think. And so I can see this is kind of trying to go for that Alan Resnick-y found footage genre, but I really don't see what the tone is. I tried to look it up online, and I don't think anyone else is seeing it. I don't think it was executed that well. So yeah, unfortunately, Pervert Everything is going to go in D tier for me. The next one is Flayaway, which is also, I think, kind of one that people talk about because this one stars Sarah Sherman, and I said that I was an SNL fan. Sarah Sherman is part of the cast now. And sometimes I think I like her. Like, I like that she's trying to bring this new, younger millennial, really still younger millennial humor to SNL. But sometimes I don't like her. Sometimes I think she's just a little too gross and the cringe doesn't hit. And yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. She's really hit or miss for me. This one specifically is kind of funny. It's kind of entertaining, but it also is a little too gross and kind of misses the mark on being older Adult Swim. I'm putting it in C tier. It's not horrible, but it doesn't quite hit. The next one is When Panties Fly. So this one is just, it's not that interesting, honestly. It's just kind of a dry overview of panties and underwear and what they've represented, but it's not, factual, but it kind of reads like it's factual, but it's like all over just stock images. Again, I can see where hypothetically this fits into the Adult Swim infomercial landscape, but it's not that interesting. Sorry, it's not one that's like super rewatchable. When Panties Fly is going in D tier for me. I mentioned before in my love for cringe comedy that I liked I Think You Should Leave by Tim Robinson. This next one gives me Tim Robinson vibes. Like I watched the credits almost expecting his name to come up, and I like that. It's Piggy. It's about a genetically engineered employee of a fake Amazon-like company. I think this one's funny. It doesn't quite have the Adult Swim infomercial edge in that sort of like memeable parody that keeps delivering. So unfortunately, it's not going to hit my top tiers. But I know that I was like entertained watching it, just because it like I think it could fit into a cringe kind of like sketch comedy humor show that I would find interesting. Not exactly Adult Swim. It's B tier for me. This next one is Skeleton Landlord. It is not amazing. It is. I'm honestly pausing here because I can see that there's some that I could put in one tier or another. This Skeleton Landlord, it keeps you interested. Like it kept me engaged through the whole thing. It had, and I think this is why personally I put it a little higher, it has kind of important videos playlist energy in the animation style and some of just the like odd timing and weirdness. And I think to me, as I'm looking on this list, the kind of weirdness moves something up the list when others that are more just like basic humor. I guess I really like things that are kind of like screwed up. I don't want it to be normal. So I don't know. I actually wanted to put Skeleton Landlord in B. It's kind of entertaining to me, but it's not that great. I could see it going in C. I could see it going in C, but I'm looking at my tier ranking, and when I see like Mulchtown, Giles Vanderhoot, like those to me are kind of one note, whereas at least Skeleton Landlord is sort of interesting. So it's going in B. And then my final one is Wormholes. So this is the last one. Again, I feel a similar pull with this one that I do with Skeleton Landlord in that it keeps you interested, it's entertaining, it has some interesting themes, the internet, mental health, spiraling, which we can relate to. It's not great, it's not bad. I could see it going in B, but I actually think it's a little one note in that I'm going to put it in C. Okay, well, here's my tier ranking list. I looked back at this and I'm pretty happy with it. I think this reflects like next time I watch infomercials, which are the ones that I could literally like watch anytime just when I want something creepy or weird or funny or interesting. It's S and maybe A. It's actually S and A. S and A are pretty close. I mean, the good A's. S to me is like, I like them and I would recommend them in order to get someone hooked on the series. Or, oh, I like them and I think they have kind of interesting analytical benefit. That's S tier. A tier is ones that just like I would watch. I would feel fun and nostalgic and creepy and whatever rewatching. They're very good to me. They're ones that when I rewatch, I'm excited about rewatching. The B tier is the ones that like I will rewatch. I think they're representative of the series. I think they're interesting. I think they're funny. I think they're well produced parodies. C tier is the ones that like they work. They work as that. They are like parodies. They're saying something. They're interesting. They're just not my favorites particularly. And then D tier are the ones that like something was just lost for me, which again, it's a good series. There weren't that many that I felt that way about, but there were a couple. This is my Adult Swim infomercials tier list. Please, I would love to hear other people's comments because like I said, there's just not enough footage slash Reddit threads slash YouTube commentary about this. So I would really like to hear people's commentary on this in the comments. If there's one that you agree with, if there's one that you disagree with, what your video or ranking is. I would love to see other people's rankings. Thanks, guys.